Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Fulcher from Access Sports Medicine. Welcome to this edition of The Spin, where we help you stay up to date with the latest and greatest in sport and exercise medicine. It's my absolute pleasure today to be joined by Dr. Simon Kim, who has many roles, but the most important one today is that he's the team doctor traveling with the All Whites at the World Cup in the United States. So firstly, thanks for joining us, Simon.
Yeah, thank you very much for your introduction. It's a privilege to be here with the team. A slight correction, we are in Canada at the moment and currently with the All Whites during the World Cup. We have played 2 matches and as my shirt says, we are leading on to the Belgium match.
Yeah, great shirt.
Yeah, thank you.
What we were trying to do today is maybe just share some insights about preparing teams for travel, maybe preparing teams to travel to hot climates and anything else that might come up. So I guess one of the things that interests me is that we all, as fans sitting here in New Zealand, are watching you and we see the game and the 90 minutes and effort that goes into that. What are the medical and performance realities that you and the physios and the sports science staff, what are the things that you guys do that the team or the fans never get to see?
Yeah, so the team consists of 26 players for the World Cup, and we got a reasonably big staff. So 24 staff members, so almost 1-to-1 ratio, which means that there's quite a bit going on behind the scenes. The medical team consists of myself and 3 other physios for the World Cup. There are also 2 sports scientists that support the process. The processes that go behind the scenes, like the day-to-day trainings, the meetings going through the tactics, those won't necessarily be viewed in that 90 minutes, but come to life, I suppose, during the match. The insight, I suppose, that I have to the players being available as opposed to the starting 11 versus the people that might be sitting on the bench, perhaps surprisingly to the Joe public, might be the injuries that they're carrying or the loading that they carefully monitor for, returning from the injuries that they carried from the cup season into the World Cup pre-camp and the World Cup itself. Those are probably something that the viewers that just watch the 90 minutes of football these days can go to 100 and something minutes may not get to see and appreciate.
Yeah. So you mentioned the guys that are not playing. What are those guys doing during the tournament?
The training, a lot of the trainings are 11v11. Goalkeepers that train separately, so 10v10. Sometimes the goalkeepers come into the match situations. They're covering for injuries as well, so injuries during training as well as during matches. So if somebody has to be managed off the main training session, then there are the other players that can step in.
Are they doing extra training? Are they doing match sims? Like, how do you keep those guys fit?
Gym sessions that the public doesn't necessarily see. They're doing their individualized maintenance or rehab program. Even match day +1, when the players that have had significant minutes, such as starting 11 or people that have come on and had significant time, they are recovering, but the rest of the squad, we go training and have a smaller training session, but high
Yeah,
intensity.
okay. And I thought you were in the States, but actually you're in Canada, which is probably a nice lead into a kind of discussion about travel. So you're going to different cities, players are coming from all over the world. What sort of strategies have you used to get people to acclimatize, to get people ready for a time zone? Do you have any strategies or tips around frequent travel?
I think pre-planning has been extensive. So we started talking about the travel plans, the acclimatization plans before the draw was made.
Hmm.
Then the draw was made and we found out that we got quite lucky with our draw, where World Cup matches are in West Coast. So relatively good environments of LA and Vancouver. Vancouver particularly being quite close to New Zealand's climates. It doesn't get too hot. There are some cool breezes that often come along. In fact, the Friday match is meant to be quite cold, about 15 degrees Celsius maximum, but we are in an indoor stadium. Also, the consideration was the selection of the base cap. Selection being a relatively generous word, because,
You're in Miami.
Our base game for the tournament is San Diego, a relatively good climate, but we could have ended up in somewhere quite weird. Irvine was one of those names being mentioned. So it could have been quite a difficult situation in the middle of nowhere, quite hot, and having to just come down for the match. We were in Miami. That has helped us acclimatize to the heat side of things. The pre-camp was held there for about 10 days duration for majority of the squad. We played 2 matches out of there, and the England match, I think that we had that time to acclimatize, which probably means that if we're having to play in the East Coast again, then we are somewhat ready for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know from data from the Champions League and from the IOC that travel is a big risk factor for illness. Have you had any sort of protocols or processes to try and reduce the risk of illness around travel?
Yeah, so the learnings from the Olympics and the IOC has been quite good throughout the 4-year window. So from essentially World Cup to World Cup, where at the start of that, I came in and I had initial chats with the technical staff where hand hygiene has been a priority for us. Hand sanitizer gets used at each meal. I essentially enforce that at the start of the meals. We haven't gone as far as enforcing mask wear because that has been practically quite difficult to do.
From a patient compliance or a player compliance point of view?
Yeah. Not even the player, the squad
Yeah.
compliance.
Yeah, I understand. So, I mean, I think that's a really interesting point around there are things that you know work, but actually they don't work in the real world for a range of logistical reasons, right?
Yeah, when the illnesses came up, it's served them as a reminder for returning to the basics, for hand hygiene, for the prevention of upper respiratory tract infection and gastrointestinal viral infections.
We talked a little bit about heat. So it sounds like the main strategy that you guys have employed is just kind of getting there early. Was there any thought to trying to prep before you departed, or did that come into your strategies?
Yeah, so we give pre-departure information to ask the players and recommend the players to spend about an hour of the day, if they are able to, prior to leaving in a hot environment, such as sauna or spa. That's shown to improve their acclimatization a little bit. But the main strategy was that we get the players that could be there as soon as they could and be in that environment was the main strategy. In
Yeah.
terms of dealing with the hot environment itself on the day, we've also planned around cooling strategies. So slushy is being used quite routinely in the training sessions and in the matches during the breaks, and may or may not go into the controversial hydration breaks.
Well, they're great for advertising and revenue. So tell me about your experience with slushies. So I'll tell you about my experience first, and you can tell me whether things have changed. But we bought a slushie machine that was too heavy to put onto a commercial airline. I think it might be in a well-known physiotherapist practice right now. And it also players found it really hard to consume enough slurry to actually, I think, cool them and certainly to hydrate. So have there been any learnings there?
So we would be serving them small amounts to essentially to their tolerance, rather
Mm,
than teaching them going, this is amount to drink
yeah.
or to consume. It's been well received by some players. Some players don't like it, and they are used to hot environment in terms of normal playing environments they're in. So I think in Miami we've had about half the squad open to using and well received. In terms of their slushy machine, yes, the team has sourced a machine, heavy, cumbersome, now not getting used because we're in San Diego, LA, and Vancouver.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is a logistical difficulty. We've looked into a more modern, more mobile slushing machine that's available.
Yeah.
The team decision was that cost was prohibitive.
Yeah. In my experience, it's good for making post-match beverages potentially at the end of the tournament. So that might be something to consider too. So what about things like ice towels, ice vests, and those sorts of strategies? Are they things that you're using in training or games? How's that worked?
Ice towels were definitely used in games, even in the current cooler environment. I think that's one of their favorites. Some players love the ice bars even before the game kicks off. After their warm up, they'll rush into the dressing room and jump into the ice bath and then go again. I think that's an individualized approach that this particular player is used to living in Sweden. Cooling vests we have decided against because it was, again, cumbersome and
Logistics. Yeah.
yeah, whether it
Yeah.
adds to anything, we're not convinced.
Yeah. So I mean, it sounds like your message is it's the simple, practical, easy things that are
Absolutely.
making the biggest difference for you from a illness perspective and from a cooling perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. My next question is not so much about the World Cup. I don't know whether most of our Kiwi listeners are aware that most of these players are employed by their club and they go and effectively work for the national team for almost free most of the time.
Yep.
So the clubs are the employer. The national teams are viewed by the clubs as a bit of an annoyance. So I'll just give you a little bit of context about my rugby league environment. So in rugby league, state of origin or representative football is prioritised over everything. So our players and the club are actively pushing our players towards state of origin, even though it means that they're missing 5, 6, maybe even more games in a year. So tell me about the football reality and how your relationships with clubs are and how you're going about keeping them informed about their players.
So I'll divide that segment to two parts,
Yeah.
the World Cup part and the normal routine part.
Yeah.
The World Cup part, I would absolutely agree with your state of origin experience, where the clubs have been way more open in terms of communication, in terms of the data being shared and the opinions being a more of a shared decision making in terms of the dialogue. That's been quite a refreshing change, although there's still that resistance that's coming from the club environment.
Yeah.
In the normal times, it's really hard. It's been tough to get any word out of the clubs. They don't release much information until it suits them, essentially.
Yeah.
They just to release essentially everything the moment that something happens. They hold their contracts with the players, so they've got the self-interest in their hearts. I think there may be some self-interest in the club's perspective of their player coming to play in the World Cup, so probably more open.
All
So
right. As in they're in the shop window and they might be able to sell them or something like that. Is that what you think?
I think there might be a little bit of financial reward for the club as well for FIFA giving it to the club.
Yeah.
In the lead up, that there had been many meetings with teams in different time zones, meetings, discussion, some open ideas from some of the clubs, but the resistance to engage still probably remained as the overall summary.
Yeah. And from your perspective and from a New Zealand football perspective, what sort of information are you giving back to the clubs? Is it a continuous dialogue throughout the tournament? Is it a check-in and a check-out at the end? What's the approach to that?
The general approach is that when they enter the camp, then they become our player, and we have internal dialogues in the health team and within the wider team. And as long as there's no major occurrences during the tournament, the information is fed back to the club at the end of the tournament as a report. Of course,
Yeah.
we've had a situation where we had to end the players' participation prematurely just before the start of the World Cup. So again, this is now a very open dialogue back to the club of releasing all the information, the results, plans going forward, the arrangements that we have made for the player, with
Yeah.
them being very openly involved.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously that's a really shitty outcome for everyone. How do you deal with that? Does the player stay with you? Are they offered some sort of support? How does that actually work from a practical perspective? Because obviously it's devastating.
It was a devastating injury, and it was a really bad day for all of us. Something that looked relatively innocuous that would turned out to be quite a high degree injury. Essentially, support the player. The player did stay with us for a few days until all the arrangements were made. His credit, he stood up in a meeting in front of the whole group and wished everyone luck. So it
Mm.
is good of him to do that. The door is open for him to contact me or the physio team. There's a psychologist on tour who has been supporting and is willing to provide further support as required. We will hear from him after his surgery.
So just I guess to finish up, like you've been at the World Cup now for a reasonable chunk of time. We've spoken a little bit about the differences between the World Cup and club football from a communication perspective. Can you give me like maybe one medical or performance challenge that you think is unique to a World Cup or a more campaign-based tour?
FIFA is essentially the one word that comes to my mind on that. There are a lot of logistical requirements, paperwork requirements. So you lead up
Yeah.
to the tournament, you had to submit every single medication that was being brought in and had to have it approved. as well as the wider teams that are giving information on supplements and everything that's been brought in. There are challenges with regards to the big operation. So if you talk to somebody and then you get an answer and you check with somebody else and you might get a slightly different answer. So the consistency has been difficult for communication. And how everyone's watching your moves, or media are very interested in. And we had the campaign storm that happened prior to our World Cup with Instagram story.
Yeah.
Well employed.
So look, Simon, I personally have loved watching you guys perform over there. It's been just unbelievably good to watch you guys, and I'm hoping that by the time this probably airs that we've had a great result against Belgium and you're waiting for the next game. So I know you're really busy and there's lots on, so thanks very much for making the time to share your experience with us. Really appreciate it.
And thank you very much. This was a very enjoyable chat, and I just wanted to say that it's absolute privilege to be involved here. Once in a lifetime event, really.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not. Hopefully you can go again in 4 years.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. That could be a possibility.
Look, thank you, Simon. Thank you all for tuning in. Remember, you can stay up to date with Axis over Instagram. We're on The Spin from Axis. We're also on Facebook and LinkedIn. And so find us by searching Axis Sports Medicine. Really look forward to our next chat and joining you next time.
Thank you.
See you later.